You guys know who I am, unless you were late. Shame on you. Still the same person from the beginning. That was a really amazing dialogue. I personally took some things away from that. We'll share some of my observations at the very end. But one of the things that I heard there that we wanted to pivot and focus on for a second is that there's obviously a ton of collaboration. But I've sat on both sides. I lead a sales organization today. I used to lead a marketing organization in my prior life at different technology companies. And the one thing that was underlying this was that both teams need to have a shared understanding of what each other are working on in the here and now. But really the undercurrent to call out is that marketing and sales do kind of operate on different timelines. Right? Sales is very focused on what's happening today, what's happening next month, what's happening by the end of this quarter. And then within a sales leadership level, we're thinking further out. But they're really in the here and the now, whereas marketing is not only executing in the here and the now with campaigns that support sales, but you're a key player in what's the future, what's the vision. Let me pre-plan, where do I need to be in 6, 9, 12, 24 months from now? So we actually want to talk about some trends that we're seeing in the industry that will maybe help you drive some internal conversations, help you think about your strategies for 2018. And Disney is one of those. Seems like a weird one in a B2B context, but it's very, very relevant. Because there's a hidden ROI in thought leadership that we as marketers are really not portraying to our companies well today, and that we need to recognize and lean into to unlock the potential of our organization and help the market understand our points of view better. So first and foremost, we have to start from the core of it that B2B is actually more emotional than B2C. And it seems a little weird, right? Like as a person, when you show up at work, you kind of shed some of your personality to some degree. Hopefully not. We have an amazing culture. We act how we naturally are. I swear a little bit less when I'm in these walls than when I'm outside of these walls. But nonetheless, when you come into these walls, you act a professional way. But your personal life, your ability to earn, to progress, to be somebody who feels successful and satisfied and happy, provide for yourself and or your family, is very intrinsically tied to what you do in your job. And it's not a big deal if you buy the wrong can of soda, if you buy the wrong shirt size, like you can get another one. It's consumable, it's frankly disposable. And so John Miller, who was the co-founder at Marketo, had said this, and it's stuck with a lot of us to realize, we understand there's emotion in consumer buying, but there's not as much fear. And that's a good motivation to know about. Because this is, what Don Draper said famously. This, coming from the tech world, you heard this about, many different companies who built industries around their products, whether that's in tech, services, or other places. You never get fired for buying the incumbent. But why is that? Because you're not putting your reputation on the line. You can potentially hide behind, and this is not a knock on IBM. IBM has amazing products, so IBM is also a great client. Do not take it this way. However, if you buy the incumbent, you can always, as a professional, rely on the fact, it was working for everybody else. It was this person internally's fault. It was that team's fault. You can place blame. Obviously the wrong behavior, but nonetheless, you can kind of hide or point and deflect to somebody else. If you go out on a limb, maybe it's even IBM and it's a new division and you're looking at Watson as a new way to leverage intelligence within your system. If you put your neck out there and it's the wrong decision, you get fired. And I'm sure many of us have been in that situation where you're going in front of the buying committee. Could be leaders of the organization, peers of yours, different functions, and you're trying to talk about why. Why are we making this purchase? Why are we considering this vendor that nobody's heard of, or we didn't know about them in this particular way? And the one important thing to take away from this is that thought leadership, what you produce to educate the market, is what helps people on that buying committee de-risk that buying process. Because they can use your thought leadership to, one, become a master of that topic. But more importantly, beyond being a master, they can articulate a good business case using your points of view, your data, your case studies of why you are the right choice. And thought leadership starts that process. And why is this important? Because there is ROI behind this. First, when we look at some external data, external research that was done, we look at the thought leaders, the people that are creating this content. And they say, 49% of the time, they believe that it's building trust. I'm producing thought leadership, it's building trust in the marketplace. This is a good thing. Folks are considering us more. That's not bad, 49%. When you look at it from your client's point of view, though, we are greatly understating the impact it makes. It's actually over 81% of the people that make up the buying committee. Yet that's very, very senior level, the CXOs, like the multi-million-dollar purchases, whoever's making that final sign-off, 81% of the time, it's building trust with them. To open them up to considering you for an opportunity, to learning from you about the technology, products, and services that you represent for them. From the business decision makers, it's even higher, slightly, 82%. But those of us that are creating the content are understanding the value incorrectly. We just talked about sales and marketing partnership, and this is a great example of it, because that, as a sales leader now, that feels a little fluffy to me. I'm like, that's nice, but how are you gonna help me deliver revenue this quarter or next quarter? And one of the really important things about thought leadership, through this same external research, is that the creators believe 17% of the time that this gets their company RFP opportunities. So they're saying, yeah, we think, like I would give that we think it's helping. We want to take a little bit of credit for helping get some RFPs. But when you look at the actual market, 37% plus of these decision makers are actually putting you on their consideration list directly because of the thought leadership and the opinions that you're bringing into the market today. That's a big leap. Anytime you can 2x, like this is big influence. This is very hard to kind of track down because we don't have systems that are like super spot on about multi-touch attribution, and does that correlate to an RFP that didn't have a lead tied to it. But when we're doing independent research, we're seeing that this is absolutely making an impact and should be part of the argument that we make to our leadership about the power of thought leadership. But the good thing is that we don't have to just stop at the fact that there is data evidence in the marketplace that says this is powerful. We can actually monetize thought leadership a little bit differently. So that brings us to the second trend. How do you build a sustainable, profitable content franchise? This is where we start looking at case studies. So the current approach is broken. There is a big disconnect in value in content. And this is kind of, to some degree, we believe, again, not a knock on newspaper companies. They're just a different business model than we are as B2B organizations. But they're a business model that many of us have aspired to be like within our marketing organization. So we actually want to talk about some of the cons to that approach, and maybe even espouse a different model to look after. So let's take an example. This was, a while back, but over the last few years, as the proliferation of social and many new outlets to get in front of your prospective clients came about, everybody realized like, oh man, we just need a lot more content. And so they built out newsrooms, and they tried to replicate the newspaper model. Let's just churn out a bunch of content and get out in the marketplace. But what the statistics before were showing is that we're producing a ton of content. We're trying to impact our buyers and potential buyers, but we're doing it in a way that we're producing low quality for them, where they're not walking away with important insights that are helping them be more informed on the topic or make an informed buying decision. And that actually has the inverse effect, where we're now getting those clients to be less interested in talking to us because they had a bad experience with our thought leadership and our perspectives. When you look at the newspaper model, there's been massive disruption because that was one way to consume content, right? We look at newspaper was doing amazingly well, and then all of a sudden this thing called television and radio came along, huge disruption to their models. They now had major competition for eyeballs, for attention. Then in the 2000s, all of a sudden .com boom, digital came about, social came about, even more fragmentation of the eyeballs, and their model became less interesting in how we should operate, because newspaper model is all about the here and the now. It's all about timeliness. It's not as much predicated on long-term education to be able to inform you about topics and keep you informed about those topics over time. It's what's happening in San Francisco today, what's happening in the US today, what's happening in the globe today. But the good thing is there's another model that we look at and we emulate as a company that works exceptionally well. So we should actually look at the model that Disney has built and to some degree perfected as of right now, that looks at a blockbuster strategy. And there are three core pillars to what Disney does well that we as B2B organizations can learn from. One, they place bets. A newspaper model is built on a lot. And there may be some amazing journalistic content in there that's investigative and eye-opening, but there's also a lot of other stuff, right? So they're not placing bets, they're covering everything possible. Disney places very clear bets. Then they use two key principles around those bets: familiarity and extensibility. To take what is in their bets, build deeper and deeper familiarity with it, and then eventually extend it out to whatever medium we as consumers consume content, consume information, have personal experiences around. And when you look at the results, their model's working very well right now. They're the first studio that's broken $1 billion in a single year. And so let's talk a little bit about the principles they're using and how we can actually emulate them. So this is Disney's content calendar. It's pretty clear. When you look at placing bets on this content calendar that was published years in advance, there's kind of three key bets that you can see: Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar. You know, these are assets that, from a familiarity perspective, Marvel and Star Wars especially, they have been established assets for decades. They are now properties that they strategically acquired to say, hey, these are really familiar and we can get a lot more leverage. We can tell a lot of amazing stories around these across a ton of different mediums to make tons of money. So they've placed three very clear bets that they then extend into the familiarity. And familiarity isn't just Star Wars. Look at the trend on here. They acquire Star Wars, and everybody's like, oh, okay, great, they're gonna produce another 3 movies. It's not another 3 movies. They have over 12 movies projected for that franchise alone. They're now taking the familiarity of key characters that have tons of love, like Han Solo, new Solo movie coming out. Parts of the story that haven't been told that fans have been asking about for years. Rogue One. Hey, what happened to be able to get the Death Star to be destroyed. Yes, I'm a Star Wars nerd. I can talk all about it. I have seen it. It's amazing. Go check out Rogue One. Yeah, I will go see on opening weekend the next movie coming out. But they've taken this idea of, we've built an entity, we've placed a bet behind, and we're getting signals about what's working really well in this story. And we're using that familiarity to create additional extensions of that franchise via new movie properties with Rogue One and others. You know, Marvel, very proven, multiple sequels, crossovers, bringing, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy into the Avengers and all sorts of stuff. Like, they're living the comic book world now across different mediums like movies. But the interesting thing, beyond just the familiarity, is the extensibility. And this is honestly where we as marketers can learn a lot. Obviously, we have to place bets. We want to see what's working to potentially create the next part of that franchise. But if you look at Star Wars, when The Force Awakens came out, that was probably one of the most anticipated movies in decades. Broke a lot of box office records, #2 at the box office overall in the world today. Everybody knew about it, but they didn't stop with just the movie. The extensibility principle kicks in where they say, okay, I can take what's a known movie commodity, I can build a new movie, but I can take that movie and extend it out. So how else do people experience things? We can do collectibles. We can put this into kids' lunchboxes. We can look at the new avenue, like having drones. Let's create Star Wars-based drones based on key parts of the movie that everybody's gonna know and recognize. So as a new medium pops up, virtual reality, they know exactly, Disney knows exactly what they're gonna do with virtual reality. They're gonna have Star Wars VR games. And they're gonna have spin-offs of those where you can be Han Solo and you can be Luke Skywalker and you can be Rey and everybody else. The medium isn't necessarily what they focus on. It's those bets and the familiarity of those bets and those characters within there, so then extend them out as consumers experience content and things in the real world. So let's draw a better line to B2B. In B2B, our content franchise is our expertise. Our blockbuster is about the products and the opinions of why those products are essential and important to a business. That's what becomes our bets. The first one that popped up was Mary Meeker. Those that are in the tech space, generally anybody that cares about the tech world, everybody knows about Mary Meeker's report that comes out. Even though it's like 200 plus slides now that covers like every single angle of everything technology related, people are voraciously consuming that every single year. It's a huge franchise for the company she works at. The Salesforce example. Salesforce built great content franchises that start with the products they represent and the consumers, the clients that are ultimately using them. So state of service, state of sales, state of marketing, state of analytics. It's pointed at very specific target audiences of theirs to create thought leadership and opinions that help them do their jobs better, to help, in this case, understand the trends that are going on in those marketplaces. They're not just talking about Salesforce products. They're talking about what's happening now, what's going to be happening in the future, how to think differently, how to do your job better today. And then in the LinkedIn world, we have blockbusters. So because we're LinkedIn, we thought maybe we should be somebody who's really good at talking about how to use LinkedIn well. So that's where we started. Why not have a content franchise around LinkedIn? But it wasn't just an ebook. We created webinars. We created offshoots of all this content because this is how we drive ROI around thought leadership. We have an anchor asset that's gated. That's the thought leadership piece, 50-page ebook. And then we use that to create consumable pieces that are ungated, that are spread across the web, different social channels, different mediums, to be able to expose people to our thinking, give them the goodness, and then eventually attract them back to thought leadership to be able to become a lead. And then we want to qualify and nurture them, as our distinguished panelists talked a ton about. So I'm leaving Disney. want to talk about a couple other trends very quickly. So first one, who's heard about artificial intelligence? This thing, yeah, some people are talking about it. One of the really important things, if you're very focused on artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's like amazing stuff. Like the potential is right there. If you don't know who the hell your customers are and where they're interacting and how they're experiencing your brand, you're giving shit data to a system that will spit shit out. That's personal, Mike, not professional, Mike. The best thing I've been seeing a lot of our clients that are forward-looking do is undergo, if you're a large enterprise, multi-year projects. If you're a smaller organization, quicker projects, but they're bringing all the disparate data sets together to have a unified view of the truth. CRM, marketing automation, website, digital platforms like us, bring it all into one place to understand the experience that's happening and know, is this a marketing-based trigger that I should be sending? Is this a sales-based trigger? Is this a customer service-based trigger? Because if you want to use the power of artificial intelligence in the future, you better have a really good pipe to hook that thing up to, or else you're going to create a really, really bad customer experience. LinkedIn, probably the last company you thought would talk about killing hyper-targeting. I'm sure many of you love us for our targeting, so let me give you the context. Brands have been overly obsessed with zero waste. That was like the promise of digital. That's not what we should be striving for. What we want to do is really understand our buying committee and be smart about the bets that we're placing to not just pigeonhole ourselves to one of the panelists saying one person. We can't have a single point of failure. We want to understand the whole committee. And if we're thinking about that, sales is in the here and now. They're going to focus on the core of that committee, while marketing can be working on the entirety of the committee. Marketing can be working on new committee members that are joining today to have them ready in the future. So that's really where it is for B2B. It's about relevant reach. B2C is going to go super broad. That's fine. We're going to find the sweet spot. And so think about that in targeting perspectives. You have that center. This is the core. You want to make sure that you're targeting the core. But who's around the core that you need to be in front of as well? Some of them are folks that sales can tell you, like in my world, it's like, hey, IT decision maker, super important, but I also need HR and marketing or sales and marketing or whomever as part of this conversation. So include that in your targeting. And then you can use data analytics to say, all right, who else is out there? And my one ask, don't forget about the junior decision makers. It actually sounds more demeaning to say it that way. These are senior individual contributors who are some of the most influential people to be in front of. And yet we forego them every time in our campaigns. They are the individuals that actually build the recommendation, that actually create the shortlist of who are we going to talk to at a vendor, and they're the ones that hand it over to the executive sponsor of that project and say, here's our recommendation. If we're not talking to them, you may not be in the conversation if you're not IBM. All right. So I'm going to probably skip one trying to stay on time. Not this one, though. I love this one. So the promising arrival of everyone as a marketer. Obviously important to know, as we all do, we trust people we know. Water cooler talk has always been one of the biggest influencers of decisions. Why do we love events so much? Because one, we can get directly in front of a person and we know, like, oh yeah, that was the right person. But this is a digital world where the vast majority of the conversation is happening outside of peer-to-peer, person-to-person conversations. So we need to increase the trust that we have in our dialogue. And a key way of doing that is harnessing the employees in our company. Because obviously, who you're connected to, your peers, your trusted former colleagues, others in the industry that do what you do, that's who you lean on, even more so than what we're sharing. So if we're great at thought leadership, we're probably bridging that divide better. If we're bad at thought leadership, we're probably creating an even bigger divide, which makes this more important. We have to unlock the potential of our employees. As a company, there's huge impact. Our employees have much larger aggregate networks than our organic followerships. We have to pay a lot to get the reach that our employees can help us get organically. But there's also good stuff in it for the employees themselves. If you look on the left-hand side, if I'm trying to build my professional brand, if I'm trying to build my social presence with my prospective clients, I want more people looking at my profile. I want more new connections coming to me. And that all naturally happens as you're sharing via employee advocacy platforms like Elevate and others that are in the marketplace. As a company, I also love the goodness of not only is my content getting in front of more eyeballs, getting more engagement, but my organic presence is also rising along the way to bring them into my always-on communications. More company page views, more company page followers. So ultimately, as you're thinking about campaigns, what's your people strategy? As a sales leader, I work with Kelly all the time. Who are the subject matter experts that we're gonna put out there to join this conversation, to help lead this conversation? So we're thinking about how to get our thought leaders out in front of our clients, but also doing it at scale. So, rise of the influencer. I'll go quickly, because I've got like, what, 2 minutes? Cool. I just bought myself a minute. So when learning, very related. Who are we talking to? We're talking to the experts. We're talking to our peers who have used this product, used this service, worked with this company before. One way to get to them is the employees and those connections to your prospective clients or existing clients. There's another way. We want to harness the power of the influencers that are out there that also have this influence and these folks that are connected to them and following them. And this is purposely lowercase I. This is not going out celebrity hunting and getting somebody to speak for you or paying $1 million for appearance fees, stuff like that. There are so many people that are using your products today that are now empowered via platforms in my world, like G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, and others, where they are democratizing the feedback of whether or not a product or a service is good. And they're being very open about what's good and what's bad and what needs to get improved in the future, where some companies are embracing the bad feedback and changing process, changing customer support, changing the product itself. And when the feedback's good, they're using that to share out, to say, hey, you could have a similar experience. And using that as part of some of their kind of mid and lower funnel engagement tactics to get people to see the validation and come talk to them. So beyond just your employees, we can think about using platforms today that allow us to get the word out, empower your clients to talk about your products. And then the really fun one, the salesperson in me likes this one a lot. So, we are often counting the wrong metrics, counting the wrong numbers. Einstein said a lot of good things. That's one of the best that I like most. So what we really advocate for is dumping the vanity metrics. It's good to keep track of them. So maybe dumping's harsh. We're not gonna go steady anymore. We're definitely not getting married, but we wanna look at these through the right lens. They can be a false indicator of success. So we wanna look at what are the real metrics that are actually powering our business. So when we look at this, beyond the thought leadership part, we want to get to new metrics that look at what's the marketing impacted pipeline? What's the marketing impacted revenue? But I said impacted. As a marketer, please don't take too much credit. This is the thing I hate the most as a sales leader now. If you take full credit for something, when you never talked to the client, you're gonna piss sales off really bad. It's the surest way to break the relationship and cause a divorce in the power couple. Sharing and showing impact, that's huge and really powerful. These are 3 ways I advocate for looking at it. Is it a net new person that nobody in sales is talking to? Great. You open that door, you're gonna get full credit. Are they an existing client? Okay. Is this a product we've sold them before? No? Great. You get a lot of credit for that, for opening that door. If I've been working with them for multiple years and they go up and they happen to show up at a webinar, don't take a lot of credit for that. They were already buying that product. We've been working with them for years. Customer lifetime value is the final one, as you kind of take a look through how to apply this today. Customer lifetime value is what we should all strive for. Don't stop at that first point of purchase. Track them over time, because that's really where the power of marketing can come in to drive adoption of your product, to drive success of your product, and keep very happy customers, because sales loves an easy renewal.